Good day, dear friends. We are, as always, here with you in our daily format, analyzing the situation on the front lines. Before we begin, I would sincerely like to ask you to subscribe to the channel. Your subscription helps support its growth. Thank you to everyone who has subscribed. Today, we will also discuss the situation in the Kursk region, because Russian forces are currently conducting a large-scale, full-fledged offensive operation in this area. According to Ukrainian sources, almost half of all attacks are now concentrated specifically in the Kursk region. While the front line spans more than 1,000 kilometers across various directions, Pokrovsk, Kurakhove, Chasiv Yar, Kharkiv region, Siversk and others, the Kursk region is bearing the brunt of the attacks. Let's begin by opening the map. Over the past 2 days, Ukrainian resource Deep State has continued reporting setbacks in the Kursk region. With this pace, I fear they might soon face the consequences of what they call defeatism. So what do they report? They claim that on January 8th and 9th, the Russian army took control of 44 square kilometers in the Kursk region. You can now see the changes on their map. From my perspective, these figures are even somewhat understated. In reality, over these 2 days, the Russian army captured 49 square kilometers in the Kursk region. Now, let's discuss the details, starting with the situation in Russkoye Porechnoye. Yesterday, there were conflicting reports. Ukrainian sources, including Anatoly Shary, claimed that the village was fully under the control of Russian forces. However, other sources reported ongoing fighting. Reliable sources on the ground confirmed that Russkoye Porechnoye is under Russian control, although the Ukrainian Armed Forces, AFU, launched 2 counterattacks. During one of them, they briefly recaptured the Kositsa hamlet, located on the western outskirts of the village. However, they were driven out, and the western edge of Russkoye Porechnoye remains under Russian control. Kositsa hamlet, meanwhile, remains in a grey zone with no clear control established by Russian forces. The most unexpected and significant breakthrough occurred in another sector. Even Ukrainian and American maps acknowledge this development. The AFU's defenses, which had seemed impenetrable after months of Russian assaults with limited success, were breached in just 2 days. The AFU lost 44 square kilometers from their Kursk foothold. According to a soldier currently stationed at a headquarters due to an injury, who previously carried out ground operations, this breakthrough was the culmination of efforts to counter the AFU's January 5th offensive on Bolshoye Soldatskoye, which had been an attempt to derail the current Russian offensive. As we can see, the AFU failed to achieve their objectives and were pushed back to their original positions. While the Russian offensive remains ongoing, let's now analyze this area in detail. Movement is progressing in several directions. One central axis of advance is from Leonidovo to Alexandria, and further between Sverdlikovo and Lebedevka. Although progress here is slower, due to significant AFU fortifications, minefields and entrenched positions, this sector creates additional pressure on the AFU, forcing them to divert resources. The more significant Russian breakthrough has been along the stretch from Kruglenkoye. The AFU has been driven back to Nikolaevka, where battles are ongoing. Most of Nikolaevka is under Russian control, despite a failed AFU counterattack using armored columns, which were destroyed on the village's outskirts. In Viktorka, Russian forces have established positions on the northern edge of the village, though the situation remains unstable, with a full assessment possible only later. In Staraya and Novaya Sorochina, Russian presence is reported in both villages, but neither side has full control. In Pogrebki, Ukrainian claims of regaining control have proven false. The village remains contested, with battles continuing. The same applies to neighboring Orlovka, where fighting is ongoing. Finally, in the southern Kursk region, Russian forces are engaged in battles for the northern part of Makhnovka, while the central and southern parts are firmly under Russian control. There are also reports of Russian units entering Dmitriukov hamlet, northeast of Makhnovka, though no confirmed full control yet. Further to the south, the battle for Zamostiye has not yet begun, as it depends on the outcome in Makhnovka. Switching to the Kupyansk direction, in the Krasny Liman sector, Russian assault groups advanced up to 2.5 kilometers from Ivanovka, toward the settlement of Kolodez, and captured several AFU strongholds on the eastern outskirts of the village. As a result, approximately 4.5 square kilometers of territory came under Russian control. This concludes our overview of the current situation on the front lines. Siversk direction. Here, Russian forward units have advanced up to 2 kilometers northeast of the settlement of Verkhnokamenskoye and taken several Ukrainian positions. This information is corroborated by footage of Russian forces' movements in the area. Chasiv Yar direction. Russian troops, supported by heavy artillery, have resumed fighting for the territory of the refractory plant, achieving localized success. Additionally, according to some sources, Russian units advanced from the Oktyabrski micro-district to Dneprovskaya Street in the city center and captured several industrial buildings in the south. Meanwhile, Russian assault groups operating slightly further south moved north from the N32 highway, linking up with the main forces. If this information is confirmed, it would mean that the AFU grouping located in the Novi micro-district and the forest area west of it has been completely encircled by the Russian army. We will continue to monitor the situation. Toretsk direction. Reports continue to come in about advances by Russian forces on the northern and northwestern outskirts of Toretsk, where Ukrainian units remain present near the slag heaps of mine number 12 and the Fomika mine. Furthermore, Russian forces are gradually encircling the remaining AFU stronghold at the Toretsk mine from the west, via the single-story residential area, and the east, via the Krimskaya settlement. At the same time, some sources report that Russian forward units are finishing the clearing of the settlement of Dakhnoy to the east of the city and are attempting attacks toward the neighboring settlement of Dylivka, although there is no confirmed progress on the ground. Pokrovsk direction. On the right flank, a Russian armored group advanced approximately 2.5 kilometers from the settlement of Vozdvijenka and secured positions near the N32 highway, which connects Pokrovsk in the west with Konstantinovka in the east. This has completely disrupted AFU logistics in this sector of the front. It also opens opportunities for Russian forces to move further east to form the right pincer encircling Pokrovsk, as we have discussed before, or to move westward to link up with Russian forces operating in Toretsk, aiming to encircle Ukrainian forces located between Vozdvijenka and Toretsk. Additionally, reports indicate that Russian forward units have taken control of the southwestern part of Baranovka and are actively storming the neighboring settlement of Vodyanoye Vtoroye. At the same time, heavy fighting continues with Ukrainian forces on the southern outskirts of Pokrovsk, with major clashes occurring along the Uspanoye-Solonoye-Volkovo-Zverevo line. Russian forces are steadily advancing toward the settlements of Kotlino and Udakhnoye, located along the T-0406 highway. On the left flank of the Pokrovsk direction, Russian troops have taken control of the settlement of Ukrainka and reached the eastern outskirts of the neighboring village of Yesinovaya. This information has been corroborated by footage published by the Ukrainian side showing FPV drone attacks on Russian forward positions in this area. Kurakhove direction. On the northern flank, reports indicate that Russian forces have taken control of the settlement of Slavyanka, where they are currently conducting final clearing operations and consolidating their positions. On the eastern and southern flanks, there have been no visible changes, although artillery strikes on AFU positions in the settlement of Dakhnoy continue. Pro-Ukrainian sources report that after capturing Kurakhove, Russian forces concentrated their main efforts on the northern flank, with a general movement vector toward the settlement of Andreyevka, Kharkiv and South Donetsk directions. No visible changes have been reported.